Greetings everyone, my name is Dominic and today you're tuning in to the Comic Book Report, where we review comic books and graphic novels so you can get an idea of what to read. And today I've prepared another short list video for all of you. We're going to be looking at 5 great comic book creative teams. I think someone in the comments recently recommended this video topic. I'm so sorry I forgot to screen grab it to give a shout out, but if that's you, please go ahead and comment. I would love to give you props. But I thought this was a great topic. I can't wait to dive in. Before we do though, I want to shout out our channel sponsor, organicpricebooks.com. If you're looking to pick up your own comic book collected editions, I highly encourage you to check out their website. You can find a link for it in this video's description, and if you see anything there you like, you can actually use my discount code at checkout, TheComicBookReport, to receive $2 off of your order. Please note if you use my affiliate link or code to make a purchase, I will earn a small commission, but it's a fantastic way to support the channel. Thank you for considering. Now let's get started with today's list. First up, in no particular order, I'm going to be talking about the creative duo of Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale, one of my absolute favorites, and to showcase some of their work today, we're going to be looking at Daredevil Yellow. This is part of that Marvel Colors series that this team did, which include this book, Spider-Man Blue, Hulk Gray, and Captain America White. This duo has also probably more prolifically done Batman The Long Halloween, its sequel, Dark Victory, along with some other works. I believe The Long Halloween was how I was first introduced to this team of Jeph Loeb and Tim Sale, or it might have perhaps been Spider-Man Blue. I read both of those pretty early in my comic reading career. But for today's purposes, as I mentioned, we're going to be flipping through Daredevil Yellow, and as we do, a couple things I really like about this team. I just think there's an incredible synergy between them. I really like the prose work of Jeph Loeb. I think he really just understands character, and I'm really interested in his diversity. You know, with the Marvel Colors series, I feel like so much of the narrative leans on kind of a nostalgia, romance kind of themes or tones, and I just think he really hits everything pitch perfectly while preserving what makes these characters great. And then you see what he does in something like Long Halloween, where it's like just a deep crime detective thriller, and he masters that genre as well. However, the storytelling would be severely lacking or incomplete without the incredible artistic talent of the late great Tim Sale. Sale's artwork to me has always just been jaw-droppingly beautiful. Admittedly, it is a bit stylized, so perhaps it isn't for everyone. I see him do just heavy detail work, interesting, almost abstract character models in the best way. And a lot of the Marvel Colors series has this almost, especially this one here, has an almost watercolor aesthetic to it. I don't really even know how to describe it, but I just think it is absolutely phenomenal. You know, I've gone on to see these creators do different things without the other, but for whatever reason, when these two work together, we have just instant classics, at least in my mind. Daredevil Yellow in particular is one of my upper tier favorites. I love exploring the past of this wonderful character. Longer time fans of the channel might know Daredevil is my favorite comic book superhero character, and this is such a loving throwback to the Silver Age of this character. We are introduced to a lot of his supporting cast at the time, like Karen Page, Foggy Nelson, and a couple of his villains, like the Owl, Purple Man, and so on. This is a really terrific book, and like I said, I think these creatives just hit it out of the park. It's sweet, it's beautiful, it's a little bit melancholy, but it just really works. I did do a full review of this work on my channel, I think sometime in the last year or two, so you can find that if you want further details, but this is just one sampling of an outstanding creative duo. And I know with the passing of Tim Sale recently, I was devastated to feel like we're not going to get anything new from this team. It makes me want to treasure these works all the more. Next on the list today, we're going to be talking about Brian Michael Bendis and Mark Bagley with Ultimate Spider-Man. And today I'm flipping through the Volume 2 Omnibus edition. I feel like I've just used the Volume 1 quite a bit, and at this point, Mark Bagley and Bendis are off in full swing. They've had a bit of this work under their belt already. You know, this is, 40 or 50 issues into the run already. I think they went on to do about 100 issues continuously, just this creative team, which I think is was just absolutely phenomenal. But for me, I love this creative team for a few reasons. Brian Michael Bendis is one of my unapologetic favorite comic book writers of all time. Between this work here with Ultimate Spider-Man and his run on Daredevil, he earned the right as just a fan favorite for me for life. And admittedly, not everything I've read from him has been my favorite, but so many of my favorite classic comic runs come from him. So again, he's just a phenomenal writer. I think he really understands some of these characters he writes, and I think most notably with Spider-Man, this was just a refreshing retooling of just an amazing, great comic character. And Mark Bagley at this time was already a prolific and well-known Spider-Man artist, penciler. He'd done so much in the Amazing Spider-Man already, so having him team up with Bendis for the relaunch with Ultimate Spider-Man in the early 2000s was just a masterstroke. I think Bagley has really refined his technique of how to draw Spidey, and here it's aged down a little bit. The Ultimate Spider-Man is pretty much like a high school teenager, but the character models are all great. It's still absolutely recognizably Bagley Spider-Man, and I really just adore it. The way that these two together work to just create this whole new world for Spider-Man, it's just absolutely captivating and engrossing. I think Bendis really does his homework with these characters, and even as he gives them fresh spins in this alternate parallel universe, they're still recognizably the characters that have been around for decades. And I think it's really incredible what he was able to do here in the Ultimate Universe at Marvel. And Bagley, like I said, I think that I was even more impressed with this series, especially now as I'm getting older. I love seeing what Bagley did in Amazing Spider-Man, but I think he really shines here in the run of Ultimate Spider-Man. In fact, I think the pencil work here and in Life's Story, which was written by Chip Zdarsky, are probably my favorite pencils turned in from Bagley, which is incredible because he's just such a noteworthy artist. But again, this creative team just created something really special here, and doing a run together for I think over 100 issues, it's just really a feat that is not often replicated in comic book history. It's just a really fantastic run. I know so many people have praised Ultimate Spider-Man, and there's a reason. This is really a commendable run. I encourage anyone who's a casual Spider-Man fan or prospective reader, this is a fantastic place to dive into our favorite wall crawler. And hey, if you're enjoying this video and you've yet to subscribe to the channel, I would just like to invite you to do so. I'm always doing comic book list videos like this, comic book reviews, unboxings, live streams, and more. Thanks for considering. Now on with the show. Okay, next up, I'm going back to the Bronze Age a bit here with Chris Claremont and John Byrne. To showcase that, we're going to be looking at the Uncanny X-Men Omnibus Volume 2. Yes, another Volume 2. Trying to mix up my selections a little bit, making sure I'm not retreading the same books too frequently. So this Volume 2 Omnibus also incidentally has some of the best X-Men early Claremont stuff in my opinion. We have a lot of the Phoenix Saga in this one. I think we have Days of Future Past in here as well, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, a fantastic book. But going back to this creative team, I think Chris Claremont was put on many people's radar with this run on Uncanny X-Men. I think he's maybe indisputably the greatest X-Men writer of all time. He completely revamped this team and frankly carried this franchise to new heights for decades. And then you have John Byrne, who himself is a great writer, but his art is also just fantastic. And the way these two work together, like I said, I think that when we think of X-Men, we think about them in the regard or the esteem we do today, largely because of what these two creators did all the way back in I think the late 70s in this run, maybe early 80s, late 70s. Anyway, the works they did here, it really just defined a lot of these characters for just generations of readers. I know for me, when I think about X-Men, I largely think about this team here, and maybe the original Fox movie back in the day, the first X-Men movie. But at any rate, I think that this is a really prolific creative team here. I really like both of them as creators in comic book history. John Byrne obviously went on to do also other great runs like Fantastic Four and Superman over at DC. There's so many things that they've done, but I am a really big fan of both of them. Claremont, I've really only read X-Men in different forms from him, but that is more than enough. He has become a great favorite writer of mine, especially going back and reading this material. I absolutely get why this series swelled in popularity for so long under Claremont. The way he was able to string together so many subplots and introduce little kernels of stories that he would then grow and expand on, sometimes year or years later. I just think it was a masterstroke, and the ever-growing and changing roster of main characters and villains and supporting cast, the way everything is just juggled so seamlessly and paced so well, it's just baffling to me. I'm not even sure how he pulls it off, but I'm just really impressed by Claremont's mastery here. And with all of these characters as well, to see Byrne's pencil work always being dynamic, always interesting, these characters posed in new ways, everything's so striking and dynamic, and yet very unique in itself as well. It's just really, really wonderful. And I think when we look back and we think about just some of the great classic X-Men stories, especially those that took place maybe prior to the 90s, there's a reason that these two are billed on almost every single one of them, because together they have created a product that has withstood the test of time, and I think even new readers can be charmed by what they present here. Really an incredible creative team. Like I said, I really enjoy these creators separately, but together they just produce something just, yeah, incredible. I've said the word a lot, but I'll say it again. Incredible stuff here with Uncanny X-Men. Okay, so this is a newer creative team for me, but one I've really loved. I'm going to be talking about Geoff Johns and Gary Frank. And to showcase their amazing collaboration, we're going to be looking at Geiger from Image Comics. This is the first trade paperback collection. At the time of the recording, they also recently released, I believe, an oversized hardcover edition of Geiger. It includes a bit more material. But this team has worked together extensively throughout the years, primarily at DC Comics, but now they're doing quite a bit over at Image. I have been a Geoff Johns fan almost as long as I've been reading comics. Like I said, I started reading, especially with DC as a benchmark, around the New 52 era. So Geoff Johns was already really on my radar with things like Aquaman and Justice League, Green Lantern, to name a few. I went on to really love his stuff on The Flash and Hawkman and Justice Society. Honestly, he's one of my favorite comic creators ever. I've said it often about him, but he is one of those creators that he has written some of my favorite things, in the case of something like Green Lantern or The Flash, but really everything I've ever read from him in this industry has at least been good, at least in my estimation. He's never really turned in something that I was like, wow, I just didn't like that. And that's something really commendable in my eyes. I've always liked Geoff Johns. Now, Gary Frank's art is absolutely gorgeous. I love that there's a degree of realism here. I love the detail work. I think his art has a lot of polish while still feeling very distinct and, like I said, heavily detailed. I've seen Gary Frank and Geoff Johns collaborate in the past with things like Superman's Secret Origin and a lot of other works, but it wasn't really until I noticed them in the unnamed universe here over at Image with things like Geiger or Junkyard Joe that I really started to pay attention to how well these creators work together. Johns really understands characters, and he also has this quality I've really admired as well, that a lot of his work I found to be very cinematic. I think that there's a way he paces it, a way he sets up conflict, that it just really translates well in this visual medium. I think he has a kind of blockbuster quality to a lot of his work as well. I feel like if you somehow adapted the comics perfectly to screen for like a video, he would be something akin to, like, again, those just giant money-making blockbuster franchises, and I think that in the best way possible. Gary Frank also is just such a prolific artist. I love the artwork here. This kind of style just works for me across the board. And see him not only adapt DC characters, but now his own creator's own stuff with Image here with Geoff Johns. It's just really amazing to see. Geiger in particular, a kind of dystopian wasteland-like future. It's such a cool scape for these two creators to just run wild. And honestly, after reading Geoff Johns in the pages of so many DC comics, I really find it refreshing to see some more creative own stuff from him. Really liking everything I've read so far with the Unnamed Universe over here, and Geiger in particular is just an absolute standout. This creative team is one too that I don't think I've read something from them that I haven't enjoyed. If you haven't read a Geoff Johns Gary Frank collaboration in the past, I highly recommend you seek one out. Really, really good stuff here from two incredible professionals. And last, but certainly not least, we're going to be looking at Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. We're going to throw all the way back to the Silver Age of comics here. We're going to be looking at Fantastic Four Omnibus Volume 3. Yes, that is a bit of a random choice, I understand, but I do feel like I showcased the first two volumes. And in addition to that, while I've always loved Kirby's artwork, I think with the Fantastic Four in particular, he really comes into his own the further he goes in this run. And I think when we get some incredible inkers like Joe Sinnott, for example, I think everything just thrives and goes to a whole new level. And I think the art, especially from Kirby, even compared to the first two omnibuses, by the time we get to Omnibus 3 and the fourth here, we really start picking up steam. So this creative duo is responsible for so many of the comic book greats that we just think about when we go back and think about iconic Marvel Comics characters, especially at the dawn of that Silver Age, where Marvel's really starting to come together, Stan Lee's starting to just churn out more and more of these books, more of these characters that they built so many franchises on throughout the years. I really love this creative team, and I think my favorite work they've ever collaborated on that I've had the pleasure of reading is in the pages of Fantastic Four. That's right, Marvel's first family. I think it was said that Stan Lee, when he was kind of against the ropes, felt like he was quitting or not really getting anywhere, he finally decided, I'm going to write something that I want to write. And he came up with the Fantastic Four, this essentially dysfunctional family that became a prolific superhero team. I absolutely love it. I think right from the jump, so much of this mythos is baked right into what these two created. Jack Kirby, like I said, even in the beginning, his pencils work was still really distinctive and unique, but by the time we get here, I mean, just look at this art. It's hard to do better, especially in the Silver Age. There's a reason they call him the king. Jack Kirby is just incredible. I know these are both some of the industry's top professionals, especially at the time. I think their legacy in comic book history cannot be overstated. It is just absolutely unbelievable. I love when these two collaborate. I know that collaboration is not always an easy thing, and there's been so much publicized about how these two work together or some of the conflict points they have, but it's hard to argue with their final products and surely the legacy of what they were able to do together. I think Fantastic Four is just a prime example of why Marvel has had an enduring comics legacy, because this family of superheroes really established the Marvel Universe in such a profound way. And maybe they're not the flagship character anymore, like something like Amazing Spider-Man, but I think that Fantastic Four is still an essential cornerstone to the entire Marvel Universe. And that began right here in the pages of Fantastic Four by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Again, if you're interested in Silver Age comics, if you're interested in going back to the 50s, 60s, you have to do yourself a favor and read Fantastic Four by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby. Really incredible stuff, one of my favorite creative teams, and another example of comics I read very early on in my comic book collecting journey. Though when I first read them, they were in black and white in the old Marvel Essential line. It's really nice to have a copy of these omnibuses. Really thankful. Okay, and with that, I think we're going to start coming to a close here. This has been 5 great comic book creative teams. I'm really happy again for this suggestion. I thought it was such a rich idea, and if it was you that suggested it, please go ahead and comment. I'll try to pin it if I can, because I want to shout you out. I really love this. I enjoyed spending time like sitting down with my collection and thinking, what are some of the most standout creative teams I've read in comic books, and why do I like them? So thank you for indulging me, but I'm sure with a prompt like this, I'm missing a ton of fantastic creative teams, so I would love to hear more from you. Who are your favorite writer penciling duos in the history of comics? Let me know in that comments section. Maybe there's some that just need more credit. Maybe there's some that I would like to read that I've never been recommended before. So let me know who are your favorite creative teams and what are some of your favorite comic works by these teams. Would love to see our comment section just absolutely loaded with great comic book recommendations as always, especially for prospective readers out there. I just think it's a great resource. Thank you so much for this community, for always being faithful with that, and for watching and sticking around with me. It means the world. Thank you so much, and until next time, this has been the Comic Book Report. Please don't forget to give this video a like, that comment we talked about, and maybe share it with a friend. Thanks so much, and have a good one.